Welcome. Isn't it great to be back in person? After 2 years. I'm Don. This is Scott. I look up to him in 2 ways. I'd like to first thank our wives, Roxanne and Melissa. Melissa can't be here today. She has a medical procedure and she didn't want to catch anything before she went. For those that know Roxanne, you know that I won the lottery on the wife front. Wife, partner, mother, friend, chief financial officer. She's yet to tell me where we bank, but that's okay.
It's better that way.
It's better that way. Didn't I say smart? Oh, she's beyond, off the Richter scale smart. Anyway, welcome everybody. Fun to be back. And yeah, what are we gonna? Well, today we're going to talk about.
We're going to cut right to the formal part, and then
cut
do
to
the
the
rest
formal part.
Yeah. Just to remind Don.
Yeah. So the formal part is really boring, but let's get that behind us.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the annual general meeting of the Highstreet Real Estate Opportunities Trust will now come to order. My name is Scott Butler, trustee of the trust, and I will act as chairman of the meeting. The notice calling this meeting was sent to all unit holders in accordance with the Declaration of Trust. I will dispense with the calling for a reading of the notice of meeting and direct that a copy of the notice be kept with the records of the meeting. I confirm that there is a quorum present in accordance with the Declaration of Trust. Notice having been duly given and a quorum being present, I declare this meeting to be duly constituted for the transaction of business. Only a lawyer could write this stuff. It's awesome, hey? Samantha, you probably originally wrote this and then Chanel copied it. It's crazy. Okay, we've got to, there's 3 items of business for the trust. And so the reason I'm talking about the Real Estate Opportunities Trust, even though I'll talk a lot more about the Owners Limited Partnership, is there's certain requirements in the Real Estate Opportunities Trust declaration that we have to do on an annual basis. And oddly enough, they're not in the Owners Limited Partnership. So, and the way we have a lot more clarity on our investment now around just where all the value is. Think of the trust actually just as an investor in the Owners Limited Partnership. So all the value in the trust comes from its ownership in Owners Limited Partnership. And the unit value in the trust matches the unit value in the Owners Limited Partnership because it invests in units in the Owners Limited Partnership. So I hope that makes sense. I've got a little slide on that to talk about after we get through this formal part, but I'll carry on with getting one of the 3 things out of the way here. So the presentation of financials, I know this is thrilling. There's the balance sheet. I hope there's no questions. Basically we've got, if you look at the balance end of year, that's what's invested in the Owners Limited Partnership. So this is just the trust side of the business. And primarily for most of you, this is the tax-deferred investment. Share of partnership earnings. And as I've pointed out a number of times, both in presentations and in the annual letter, the share of partnership earnings can have little bearing whatsoever on the unit value. So it's important to understand that partnership earnings are accounting earnings it could be based on what's sold that year in terms of the condos, but as things start under construction, we start allocating value to the unit price. I'll get into that a bit more later. So this will be very lumpy, this share of partnership earnings that you see both on the owner's side and the trust side. So for instance, this year, we're going to have a lot of closings of condos in Nanaimo and Langford. So you're going to see this number up quite significantly from this. Here's the statement of cash flows. I'm not going to talk about this. Presentation's over on the financials. And again, so this is a good point of clarification too. This is the reason you see this, and it may look a bit odd. There's now 2 boards. One is required on the owner's LP side, which is where all the value is. one is required on the REOT side, which has 70 million of the 202. So think of it as this is a smaller portion of it. There's some minimal requirements of that board of trustees. So previously we had a board of trustees. We got great clarity when we were looking at this whole restructuring and decided that we actually needed a board of directors on the owner's LP side. And this side is really just, we get the trust actually gets an allocation from the owner's LP every year, and then we just sign off the financials. So there's really, and the owner's LP determines the unit price. So the REOT just follows along with that. So this is really a perfunctory role. Sorry, Kevin, if you were excited and thought we were gonna run everything with the trust. So this is just Don, Kevin, and I. Kevin's in town, so it made it easy. And we just said Kevin will be appointed as a trustee. So we did that. And so we've appointed Don and Kevin and I. And we also did the appointment. Sorry, I should read off the script again. Yeah, there we are. Here we are. The next item of business is to proceed with the nomination and election of trustees. The current trustees, being myself, Don Bell, and Kevin White, have agreed to stand for re-election and to be nominated for the ensuing year. Since the number of nominees is the same as the number of vacancies to be filled, I now ask for someone to move the resolution that the persons nominated for election as trustees be elected as trustees of the trust to hold office until the next annual general meeting. Who will move the motion?
So moved.
Okay. Thanks, Janelle. Who will second the motion?
I second the motion.
Nice work, Nigel. That's great. Is there any discussion on this resolution? Okay, perfect. No discussion. All in favor of this resolution, please raise your hand. And this is specifically if you're an investor in the trust. So that's going to confuse a whole bunch of people. So if you're invested in any tax-deferred stuff, Q units, TFSA, RSP, there you go. Let's start to raise your hands. There you go. That's the trust. Some have A series units. Let's do that one more time. Everybody in the trust. And yeah, okay, perfect. Look at all that. Look, that was anybody against? Any against? Okay, good.
Motion's passed.
I declare this resolution duly carried. Okay, the next item of business relates to the appointment of the accounting advisors of the trust. I now ask for someone to move a resolution that MNP LLP be appointed as the accounting advisors of the trust. Who will move the motion? Okay, that was Hannah, thank you. Who will second the motion?
I second the motion.
Great work. Is there any discussion on this resolution? And MNP is represented here by Derrick and Jessica, so if you guys have any issues, please talk to them. You can raise your hands. I don't know if anybody else from MNP is here, but Derrick, raise your hand. You can,
Put it up high, Derrick.
Yeah, trying to hide over there. All in favor of this resolution, please raise your hand. Against? You're lucky, Derrick. Worked out. I declare this resolution duly carried. That concludes the agenda for the meeting. I thank you for your attendance. That concludes the formal portion of the meeting. Okay, let's go. Let's back onto the normal stuff. Thanks, everybody. Got that over with. Okay, now we can get back on track here, Don. Let's go.
So we started with thanking Roxanne and Melissa. We'd like to just take a little moment here and invite Roxy up to speak about a book she wrote about a fascinating character by the name of Adam, who's also an investor in Highstreet. Adam, yeah, go ahead. Roxy.
Adam is also here. He just snuck in a few minutes ago.
Is he?
Yeah.
Hello, Adam.
Hi, Adam.
I gotta
Hi,
say before
everybody.
you start, if you haven't read this book, it's a must read.
Thanks, Don. I'll just take a minute. It's nice to see so many familiar faces again and so many new faces as well. Highstreet's been a great supporter of the book, so I did have a chance to meet a lot of you when I signed books for you a few years ago. If you haven't got one yet, Scott is buying them as gifts for all attendees, so if you either need it yourself or you'd like to gift one to somebody, come and grab one and I'll sign it and Adam will sign it for you. And the reason that it's relevant is that, well, let me back up a little bit. So I met Adam Bauman 10 years ago now, And when I heard his life story, I was quite fascinated by it. It wouldn't get out of my head, and I was not a writer at the time, but I felt I was really fascinated by his story, and I thought, somebody's got to write this down. Nobody else is going to, so I guess I'll have to. So I started studying how to write and the book publishing industry and all that sort of thing. And Adam and I worked together for 5 years on it, and we had something like 400 and some odd recorded conversations. And 5 years later, we published the book, The Upside of Hunger, which is a novel based on his life story. So Adam is an investor in Highstreet, and I'm an investor in Highstreet, and so it's kind of relevant to for Scott to support actually probably the main reason that it's a good cause to support is the scholarship fund, right?
Yep.
So since when I was working on the book, I literally woke up one night and thought, what if it's successful and it makes a profit? And I didn't want to make a profit on Adam's life story, so I talked to Adam about it. We decided to donate all of the profits to bursaries to families, kids graduating from high school from families, financially strapped families. And so that's where all the proceeds go. And so the more books that we can get out and the more reviews that you can all do and spread the word, the more kids that we can help. One of the kids, I was going to tell you about a couple of the kids just briefly. One was a girl from who relocated here with her family not long ago from Cambodia and had quite a long, interesting story, and they came here with nothing. And we were able to help her get into first-year university, and she's going on to medical school. And another one that just recently, it's a boy named Tyrone, who wrote me a long letter that I just received recently about how he lost his mom to brain cancer when he was, I think, 15, and his dad is not a nice person. So he and his brother have been struggling to kind of, get through and living with foster parents and that sort of thing. He's a really bright boy. He skipped a year of school and graduated a year early and really wants to go on to learn a trade. And so we picked him as one of our scholarship recipients recently, and he's now going on to study engineering. So that's pretty cool. So I do definitely want to thank Scott and Highstreet for supporting the book and the scholarship fund. It does help a lot. In terms of where the book's come in the last couple of years, I don't know, I haven't really even updated you guys about this, but was nominated for an award for Best Independently Published Book in Canada recently, and so that was really exciting. The book was also the book's also been formally reviewed and approved for use in high schools. It's been adopted by a number of high schools and then went through a formal review process. So it's on the approved curriculum list for high schools across BC and used in a number of high schools. So if you know any teachers, that's another place to spread the word.
I think that's especially cool, Roxy, because it's the first, you told me it's the first book you wrote.
Yeah.
You had to learn how to write this book.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah.
very cool.
And I remember the first night that we met Adam and Jean and had a big conversation with them about Adam's life story. I remember distinctly saying to Kevin that night, God, our kids need to hear this story, about overcoming obstacles and perseverance and making the best of situations, and it's a good story for kids. That's another reason it's great that it's in high schools. So two other pretty exciting points. I found the narrator that I want to use just a couple of days ago. It's a fellow named Paul Michael, and if anybody is an audiobook fan in here, he narrated The Da Vinci Code and a bunch of other books, and he's going to do The Upside of Hunger. So that'll be out this summer, fall. Super exciting. It's a big investment, but I'm pretty confident that the audiobook market is really strong, and so we'll make that back, and then that'll start to add to the scholarship fund as well. And I also signed an option for a movie a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
That doesn't mean a movie will actually happen because it's just an option. So, but a publisher picked up the book in a bookstore and was super excited about it and approached me. to sign an option, and I said, sure, why not? So he's looking around for, he's starting to shop the story around, looking for financing to make a movie or a series on it, so that's really exciting. So stop by, grab a copy. Adam's here now as well, so he'll sign it for you as well. And thanks again, Scott and Highstreet, for supporting the book and the scholarship fund. And yeah, we'll hopefully see it go even bigger and better places.
Right on. Thanks, Roxy. Thanks. Thank you. It's awesome. It's a great story about perseverance and determination and overcoming obstacles, and I highly recommend it. So everybody grab a copy, please. We also have, so this is, I have this, as most of you know, I watch Berkshire Hathaway a lot, and I have this vision of this mini Berkshire Hathaway version of that at Highstreet.
I'm the Charlie part.
Yeah, he's older, clearly. So this, part of that idea is the fun they have at the AGM. And so I've been to two now. We went in 2016 and then again in 2019. And it's an absolute blast. And they have, I mean, Berkshire's obviously very different. They own a ton of companies and they have stuff on display. And you can buy anything from running shoes to a jet engine to a mobile home to whatever,
Dilly
right? And so just, to a dilly bar. So you get lots of dilly bars sold. But, I thought in a small way, we have, a lot of our investors have businesses and interests and everything as well. And obviously we've got the book display, and we also have Suman's display in the back corner. Now, Suman, our architect, is very talented, and in his whatever spare time he comes up with when he's not working on the Highstreet stuff, he just does this amazing artwork in his spare time. And so I highly recommend everybody check it out. And please, if you feel inspired,
Suman, where are you? Stand up.
Yeah, where is Suman? There he is. So yeah, round of applause for Suman. Thank you for. Thanks for setting that up, Suman. I know he was busy putting all this in frames the last couple days and trying to figure out how to price things, and so this is awesome. So thank you very much. And I would encourage next year, I mean, a lot of you have businesses and stuff like that. I'd be happy to have things on display. I know one year we had Bill Lamberton giving a discount on his tours. So Bill, I don't know where you are right now, but Bill, there's a hand up over there. So Bill runs these classic Canadian tours. He runs polar bear tours, and you can go on a grizzly bear tour. So raise your hand again so everybody knows who you are. So if you're interested in an awesome, he does it all in one day. You fly in, fly out. You're treated extremely well. It's awesome. I did it with my oldest son, William, when we went out into the Kutsumatine and saw the grizzly bears. It was fantastic. They do a great job. You might be able to talk them into a discount as a Highstreet investor. So go talk to Bill. I'm putting that, yeah, whatever. Yeah. You did it last time.
He started
But yeah, I mean, Matt sells beer. You might be able to get a discount on beer. So cheap six packs.
Where's Sharpie? Sharpie sells skis.
Yeah.
Armada skis. Yeah, you guys all need to bring your stuff back here, especially the beer.
There you go. Yeah. He sells, I think he's got crib boards now. So this is exciting for a few guys in the audience who play crib, but Phillips crib boards. I don't know, maybe we can get a discount on these. I don't know, that's those on display.
Boy, I can see we're going to need a bigger room next year, Scott.
I think so, with any luck. I mean, and that's like Berkshire that grew every year, so I think we can count on this.
Scott goes back and he looks at pictures of me when I was his age, and he says he looks younger at this age than I did when I was the same age. So we have this constant battle of pictures going back and forth, and he goes, "No, that wasn't 2003, that was 2007."
Yeah, Don tries to send me pictures from, like, we're 20 years apart, so he'll send a picture from 30 years ago. And so, no, you. I'll send you a picture when I was 36, and it's fine, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, his hair used to be blonde before he started WestJet, so that's what happens if you run an airline.
Speaking of West, how many WestJetters in here? Natalie, I see you're here. Put your hands up.
It's probably
Pleasure.
Pino's like, he doesn't identify as a Western. Nobody wants to admit to that anymore, Don.
Nobody wants
That's
to admit
it,
that
yeah.
anymore? Oh, yeah. That used to be a great company, didn't it? Yeah. Crap.
Okay, we're getting off track. It is. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I mean, this is awesome. This is like hosting a wedding when we do this for me. It's awesome to see everybody. My dad's here as well. So, Dad, if you want to put up your hand, Steve.
Steve.
Sir, stand up. Yeah, stand up. That's Steve. Yeah.
Excuse me, I don't know if you know any of the history of Scott and Don, but many, many years ago, Scott moved to Calgary, and I kept encouraging him to go to WestJet, because I'm also a pilot, and quite a bit of flying. So one day he walked down the hallway and opened the door. There was nobody at the front office. They were having a board meeting, and that's how he got started with WestJet and met Don.
Yep. Absolutely. No, it's a great. I do thank my dad for that trajectory that my life went on after going to WestJet. Yeah, it's emotional when I think about it. It was huge, a great 5 years, which led to everything that we're doing at Highstreet. So it's pretty awesome. Which is a great segue to the partnership that Don and I have had. I've known Don since I met him in 1999. Somehow we got to know each other well at WestJet, even though I never was in Don's department. I didn't report to him. He kind of took me under his wing, and we talked a lot. I remember the first interactions I had with Don. I had to do an audit. I started the audit committee, and I had to do an audit report on cash management at the airports, and go tell him how crappy the cash management was at the airports. And that was the first report I had to present to Don. But anyway,
That coupled with the chip on your shoulder, I should have fired you.
yeah, that's right. This chip on the shoulder gets really misunderstood, Don.
No.
God. Anyway, so Don and I have had a wonderful
He is
partnership.
getting some gray hair in here, though. That's kind of good
No.
to see.
We've had a wonderful partnership. It's now well over, it's over 20 years. We're going on 23 years, and never a harsh word, and always alignment since we've been doing business together. And in 2005, and I told Don before I told anybody else that I was going to leave WestJet, and about 9 months before I left, and he's like, "Oh, what are you going to do?" "Oh, we're going to go start a business." And well, I'll back you. I'm like, "You don't even know what it is." "Yeah, no problem. I'll back you." I don't know if Rox knew that, but that was just a bit of a leap of faith there.
Yeah.
So that was great. It gave me the encouragement to go out and go do something. And we ended up settling on real estate development, which through another coincidence of, my dad had this land in Courtenay that he was a partner in this land in Courtenay, and he said, "Well, go look at this land." And I thought, I don't know if I could be a real estate developer. I mean, maybe we'll check it out. My brother Matt was doing construction for a lot of developers. And so I thought, well, he could build it, and I could figure everything else out. And I mean, as soon as I started to look at it and go, yeah, maybe we can do something here. One of the calls I made actually was to my buddy Lar, who was working at Royal Bank at the time. Lar, if you want to put up your hand. So I'd call Lar, who was doing commercial real estate lending, and say, "How does this work? What do I do?" And ask him a lot of questions. So Lar helped out in the beginning. He doesn't even know how much, but I'd ask him questions. And we kind of obviously went from there. And so Don, and I should add, I always like to joke about this, so I might as well joke about it with my dad in the room. It had to be the worst piece of land we've ever dealt with at Highstreet. It had everything wrong with it, and it's not a wonder you guys had it for so long. Every developer walked away. I was green enough that I had no idea how complicated it was, but we had to deal with everything under the sun. I'll tell you more later, but we learned quickly how to identify land that was less complicated, because that created the checklist for, you don't want to deal with the Ministry of Environment, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Ministry of Highways, fiber lines, sewer upgrades, water line upgrades. Anyway, I could go on, but a heritage study. Anyway, that's
Courtney.
Yeah, and the city of Courtenay. Anyway, so back to the partnership with Don. I mean, Don's been a wonderful mentor, friend. It's like a secondary father figure. a great support for Highstreet. I talk to him nearly every day, kind of either on the way into work or the way home. He helps me with thinking through issues, and yeah, just Don deserves a ton of credit for where I'm at today, and I can't distinguish between my own thoughts and what Don's influenced over the years. So thank you, Don. It's, very good.
Well, thank you. You're a pretty easy guy to work with. Scott is, as you've heard me say
Except for
before,
the chip.
he's actually, I've seen the chip is softening. It's kind of good. He's mellowed, and he's a good student, and also a good teacher. And it's unique when you can have we've known each other 22, 23 years. Been working together since 05, so what's that, 17 years? Never had an argument. You don't see that very often in business. Scott's also very intuitive. He uses a combination of empirical data and just a gut feel to identify stuff that makes sense. And he learned that after buying the land off his dad as a start. And he has an uncanny ability to, well, I think one of the things that I appreciate most about Scott is that he sees challenges as opportunities. And as we'll talk about a lot today, we're facing rising interest rates that are going to be happening more and more to combat the rising inflation. And I lived through the 80s where I saw a great deal of turmoil in interest rates and mortgage rates and collapse of business and so on. So I'm very nervous about that because that's the lens that I look at the world through. And he's, instead of getting upset and concerned about the future, he says, yeah, bring it on. Let's get ourselves prepared as best as we possibly can, and let's attack the future with eyes wide open and make sure that we're ready for whatever the world brings us in this next chapter. So it's fun to watch him. It's fun to work with him, and it's one of the most fun times I've had in my life. So very cool.
Thanks, Don. And just so I don't turn this into some self-admiration thing, let's carry on and introduce I'd like to introduce the board. So now, when I talk about the board, I'm talking about the Owners LP board. So I mentioned that the trust has that requirement to do the election. We did talk about changing the Owners LP to an election next year. For this year, because of all the reorg that we just did, it is an appointment by the general partner. I happen to control the general partner. So hopefully you're happy with the board today. So it's Don and I, and if we can get the rest of the board to stand up, please, and I'll do the introductions. Wherever you are, please stand up. And then, yeah, we had one more. Is that everybody?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Oh yeah, Derrick, is Derrick here?
Derrick maybe is here later in the day.
Oh, okay, so Derrick's not here. So, okay, well, first of all, I'll go through the introductions. I'll try to go in order of history. So Eric Morris has known me longer than Don, actually. So everybody's been working on me for some time. And Eric met me when I was 20 at the University of Victoria, and got into the commerce program there. And Eric was in charge of or at least one of the professors in the entrepreneurship program. He now runs the, I'm going to get it wrong. Morissette Institute for Entrepreneurship at London School of Business, Ivy. And I got to participate in a program he did there a few years ago. It's awesome. And but anyway, one of the reasons Eric's on the board, aside from this long history and investing in Highstreet, and he was a great mentor and friend, is at the thing I went to in 2016. It was May of 2016. There was a strong encouragement to start a board of advisors. And by the end of the week, I asked Eric, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this for real this time. And how would you like to be on it? And he said yes. And so that was awesome. So at that, I also met the gentleman next to him, Matt Phillips. So the week that I was there, Matt, thanks for raising your hand. I met Matt and we hit it off right away. It turned out he was from Victoria. We had a lot of shared history in terms of his business evolution and starting out on his own, trying to brew beer and doing it on his credit cards and this crazy story leading to a fantastic success story with Phillips Brewing out of Victoria. So Matt's a great influence on the board and a lot of shared history there. And Nigel, also, I met Nigel in, I think it was 2013, around there, 2012, 2013. And Nigel really helped Highstreet through an evolutionary standpoint with, we were working with Train at the time, and Nigel helped on both sides of the business and helped us work together and was a great friend, mentor, influence again. And so when we started a board, Nigel was a natural fit. And of course, Kevin White actually met through Derrick. So Kevin is Roxy's husband. And I met through Derrick Johnson. And Derrick's been a wonderful supporter of Highstreet, actually, through the introduction of many people and investors. And it's just awesome to have that connection as well. But I met Kevin a number of years ago, and he's got a great business mind. They had an IT consulting company with healthcare in Australia and Canada. I think I got that right, mostly. Yeah. And yeah, just a great business mind, and great to have Kevin on the board as well. And to round it out, Derrick Payne, who's not here yet. Derrick I've known since, Derrick actually hired me at WestJet. So that was, he met me before Dawn at WestJet, somehow hired me as a 24-year-old kid with a chip on my shoulder to start the audit committee. And I had no business doing that, but Derrick took the risk. And they were cheap. I'll have to say, WestJet was really cheap. So as a 24-year-old, I thought 36 grand a year was fantastic. When you look back on it, you go, you had a kid running the audit committee of a public company who didn't have his designation yet in accounting, and you were paying him 36 grand a year. Like, that was a really cheaply run organization at the time. Shouldn't have hired me. But anyway, there's the board. Okay, now we'll move on to the leadership team. So if we can get the leadership team to stand up, please, everybody. We'll do that. There they are. Thank you. Round of applause for the leadership team. Awesome. And I'll let Christina do most of the thank yous on that, but I will point out, as many of you are aware, I've stepped back into a different role. In January, Christina took over as president on the development and construction side of the business. So Pino and I still deal directly on the community side of the business, but Christina took on the president role on the other part. So Christina's been at Highstreet since April 2015 and started as a development coordinator 4 days a week. So I guess you want to work part-time. That didn't work out. So she quickly earned a promotion to manager, then went from manager to director of development, and then a year later was vice president of development, and then I threw sales at her at one point, and every challenge Christina's risen to and continues to excel. She understands the culture intimately, demonstrates a great ability as a coach, both leading people up and out. She understands the performance, how we make money, land acquisition, everything. So I'd just like to bring Christina up to say a few words. So thank you, Christina.
Thanks, Scott. It's a bit of a tough act to follow over here with these two. Yeah, when I started back in Highstreet in 2015, there were 10 of us, and I think I got interviewed by half the office to be the development coordinator. And now we're a team of 95 and counting, and it's been a really fun ride to be on for the last 7 years. The growth and the journey, and a lot of hard work, and it doesn't come without a really great team making that happen. And a lot of them are in the room today, and our Highstreeters here that are here, maybe you could all stand up. There's quite a few of you here, and they're the ones that make this happen every day. I just want to thank you. None of this happens on our own, and they're the ones out there working and making it happen every day, and we're really thankful for what they do. And another thing, I think with Highstreet and just like the theme of partnerships is our trades and our consultants have been with Highstreet longer than I have, some of them, and same thing, without them, they're so key to what we do every day, and there's a lot of them here again too in the room, and I want them to stand up, and they are key to our success, and they're out there, and they're grinding away. It's been a really tough year. with all of the supply chain issues and all that. And so I just want to, the trades and consultants stand up. Thank you for everything you do. It takes an entire team, and we really do appreciate you. And it's been a tough year. Obviously great on the trust side and the financials, but for a lot of the trades and consultants, and it's hard to find labor, and they're out there and they're making it happen, and we really, really, really appreciate it. So, and that moves me on to the leadership team. I'm so thankful to be sitting next to them every day. I have a stellar leadership team with Janelle as our VP of Talent and Services. She joined us in January. She was our board secretary, I guess was called before, and got to know her over the years. And I think it was at a board meeting a year ago. Hannah and her got talking, and we were getting to a size where we kind of need somebody to focus on that side of the business. And it was like, hey, Janelle's the perfect fit, and Janelle wanted to be here. And so she started with us in January, and we're really happy to have her. And Neil, who was my successor, I've known Neil since 2005. I guess we worked together in Calgary as well. At a big architecture firm there. So he's joining us 3 months. He's been here. I think his second day he had a board meeting and it was his birthday, so he got his pretty good when he got here. But really happy to have him on board. And then of course Hannah, which a lot of you probably know very well, and our VP of Finance. She's been awesome. We've been working on about 2 years, I guess, in the role, and I've been really happy to have her. And they're a great team, and they're great leaders, and they lead a great group of people. I'm just really, really happy to sit beside them every day and collaborate with them. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to talking to a lot of you today, and I hope you enjoy the day. I'm hoping the rain stays off and that we can have a good site tour. But thank you very much.
Thanks, Christina. One more thing before we get into the rest of the talking about High Street. I would like to thank Jeff for his contribution to High Street over the years. And Jeff recently just moved into a role that he's excited about as a strategic design lead. Did I get that right? And he's going to be a great assistant to High Street. But importantly, I want to thank Jeff for, he's been with us for 8 years. He's an awesome guy. Everybody knows Jeff, knows his heart is right in with the culture at High Street. And we're happy to have moved him in a role that he's going to be happy in. And so he stepped down from VP Construction into this new role. He's really going to help High Street in that role, but I do want to recognize his effort to date. He started the construction company with us in 2017. We've built a lot of buildings together through thick and thin, and managing everything and all the stress that's come along with that. So I just wanted to appreciate Jeff. So Jeff, you can stand up and give him a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, and Pino, I'm going to bring you up later, so I think you're get ready for it. Okay, let's get going. So I mentioned this, and I know this spaghetti diagram. It used to be a lot more complicated, but I think that the point that I wanted to make here, and all I'm trying to say, because you can't even really see it, is this is the trust. This is High Street Owners LP, which was formerly Developments LP, but because it's no longer Developments, we had to rename it. And we like the idea of owners. You guys are all owners in what we're doing. Don't call it the Hope. Call it Owners LP, please. And so the Owners LP, here's all the development stuff. Here's all the communities that we operate. So everything that Pino manages is over here. And so we've got 6 communities there. Well, almost, I guess, yeah, 6. And then Comox will be the 7th. And a bunch of stuff under development. So just thinking about how this flows, if you look at it, obviously Owners LP owns everything there, and the trust just owns a portion of Owners LP. So, Don, what are we going to talk about?
Well, as I sort of touched on, I think at the top of everybody's mind might be the economy and interest rates and inflation. And as I mentioned, my lens was back in the 80s when, late 70s to late 80s, when interest rates hit a peak of 21.5% in 1981, backed by the effort to push down inflation, which hit a peak of 12 to 13% in about the same time period. interest rates never got, in that whole decade, late 70s or to late 80s, interest rates didn't get below 10%. So this is deja vu for me. It's like we're looking at what's the saying about history never repeats itself, but it rhymes. We're heading into a very similar period, not quite sure where it's going to go, but if I was looking at this solely as an investor from the outside, I'd be very interested to know what Highstreet is thinking, what the leadership is thinking about the future in terms of this. You've seen interest rates and bond rates rising. That's going to have an impact on cap rates. That's going to have impact on valuations. That's going to what's happened with, we came out of a 28.4% year last year. It's an unbelievable year in terms of return for our investors, but people should be raising their eyes and go, that can't be repeatable over and over, which of course it isn't. But it also draws a bunch of the riffraff into the industry because they can make so much money. And so this has been top of mind for the board for a number of sessions where we're going, what do we think might happen? What does history teach us? What's the future look like, or what scenarios might play out? How do we best position ourselves to be ready to take on whatever the future brings? And that's really the fundamental message that we want to impart today, along with all this great stuff that's going on. But how are we ready to move into the future with all this uncertainty in terms of interest rates and inflation and a war going on in the Ukraine, and who knows what China's going to do, and Russia and all their stuff, and oil going through the roof. I did bet about, was it a year ago? I said oil's going to be $100 in February of 2022. Well, I was a little bit under, and everybody laughed at me at the time. But it's, as we know, the world changes, and it changes rapidly. I mentioned that in Alberta in March of 2020. Is Rob Dole here from Airdrie? Well, Rob has a very successful home building business in Airdrie, and he couldn't give a house away in March of 2020. He had houses he'd built on spec, and he was very worried about what was going to happen. And then a few months later, he can't build them fast enough. So we know that the world can change very rapidly, and with social media, it's the message getting out there isn't always correct. So how do we position Highstreet to be in the best possible position it can moving forward? That's why we're really lucky to have Scott as the CEO and leader, and he is bright and intuitive and really understands how to. You've heard him talk a lot about being mentored by a lot of different people, but he'll look to the world to get insight into what may or may not happen moving forward, and then we act to get ourselves in a position where we're ready. Whether it's these idiots that are getting sucked into the industry because of the incredible returns going bankrupt because they're over leveraged. Maybe we'll be ready to take some of them over in the future. And there's so a lot of discussion at the board. We had an all-day board meeting yesterday, and this was the primary topic, number one on the list that we talked about. So I wanted to kind of relate that to say, take comfort in the fact that this is very top of mind, and what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and it's fair to say, with that in mind, we raised money. And so we didn't necessarily need all that money. And we've got the project in Kelowna that we can proceed with, and that was certainly one of the reasons to raise money. But we also wanted to have a war chest of cash ready for whatever's going to happen. And so I'm very comforted, and it, again, the reference to Berkshire. Berkshire maintains a lot of cash, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 25% of their stock market valuation is cash. And when I look forward at our current valuation, our post-raise valuation will be about $235 million. And this fall and this winter, we're going to have between $40 and $60 million in cash. And that could be as high as 80 if we decide not to proceed with the affirmation project in Kelowna, depending on the environment. So we've got a lot of flexibility with that cash, right? With cash, we can survive anything, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, Buffett pulled out the phrase about cash is like oxygen, and it's, you know, you don't know you need it until you don't have it, and then everything goes to poop. But yeah, we're well positioned for it. We know that the margins we've been seeing in the last few projects and the margins we're looking at going forward can't last. It does attract a lot to the industry. You know, there's always the supply constraint from municipalities that slows things down, which keeps the price high. But do we expect a correction? Absolutely. You know, we're planning for it. We expect it. We also know we've done some modeling on the impact on the unit price and the impact on valuations. We're still, you know, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, and we've projected. We do know the Bank of Canada is signaling the overnight rate is going to go up by probably at least another 200 basis points. So we start to model that on the impact on valuations on rental apartments and everything else, and you know, just some back of the envelope math. You know, we could see a unit price that declines. We could see, you know, that could happen. I just want people to know that if that happens, don't sell. That would be the wrong time to sell. We're focused on no permanent loss of capital. So just because the unit price may be flat or even go down doesn't mean we're losing money or we're going to lose money. If we're never in a forced sale position, we won't lose money. And a great example of that is our Calgary project, who a number of you invested in, and we had high hopes for Calgary. After years of trying to find land, we finally got a parcel in northeast Calgary, which is a bit like the dog catching the car. And so we finally got the land in 2014, and then by the time we built it, oil had dropped significantly. Alberta was in a downturn. We had a project that went from, we were going to build it for 54, it was going to be worth 74. By the time we started renting it up, the first week we were renting, we were lucky to get $1,200 for a 2-bedroom and $1,000 for a 1-bedroom, and the value was down to $44 million. And so we had a purchase agreement with Skyline that dictated the price would be based on the rents that we achieved. And at those rents, as soon as I found out what we were getting on the first 10 rents, I called Matt Horgan, who's the president of Skyline, and said, we're not going to sell the building to you. And he goes, good, we don't want it anyway. So we took over the employees and started managing and looking at the environment. We decided that the condo market was still okay. We could break even selling condos. We could pay down the debt. So we started to sell condos and pay down the debt. And that gave us an opportunity to refinance because one of the banks wasn't going to extend the loan. They actually wanted it paid out, which I should have been a lot more worried about at the time. But I just kept fighting. It was just another challenge, just another fight, another battle to get through. And we just kept working on it. And we had to pay off a Skyline mezz financing. We had to get enough sales. Don and I ended up buying a bunch of units. Keith bought a few for his own. The maths worked out great, as it turns out, on buying the units. But we did it largely to pay down the debt at the time and make sure we could keep the financing alive. So all of that to say, it was worth $44 million at the end of 2016. We paid down the debt. We cash flowed it over the years. We sold 128 of the 288 condos, had 160 left. The market's now risen again, and we've listed condos. We've got it on the books for $29 million, and at the current list prices, it's worth $35. So after all that and all that turmoil, Calgary will end up making money for us. So, that's an example of what can happen in a significant downturn in valuation. And that's 74 million to 44. So I don't know that percentage off the top of my head. I probably should. It's a lot. Close to 30. Well, what are we at? So anyway, got that math. 40%? Matt, you can do that math in your head, can you? Let's say. Anyway, so call it a 40% downturn. So are we going to experience a 40% downturn across all of our markets? I don't know, but are we poised to manage through it? Yes, and I think that's the key salient point that we've talked about other strategies we have right now because we do want to keep the business going. We want to keep, there's a business here. It's not just a financial instrument. We're not just a stock that trades. It's a business, and we want to operate it for the long term, and we want to keep our good people around, and we want to manage through downturns and keep going, because if we just stop construction and lay people off, we won't be able to start again when things are good. So we have to keep some momentum going. So we've talked about going to smaller projects, and we've already got to have that in the pipeline, but a good example is in Langford. We have two options. One's a much bigger site and one's a smaller site. We're proceeding with the smaller site. You know, we're moving people from Comox right now to a site in Parksville. Comox is 232 condos and apartments. Parksville's 137. If I got that math right, it just changed a few times. But so 137 in Parksville. So you can see that just this natural kind of de-escalation of volume, but still keeping things going to make smaller bets, and but still keep the whole business going and keep our people on board and keep going through any potential downturn.
I think that the underlying thing that what we want to know as investors is that the business is going to be taken care of. And I think you all, what always surprises me, I guess it doesn't really surprise me, because if Scott and I talked all our friends into investing in Highstreet, so if it didn't do well, we wouldn't have any friends. But it's the loyalty and respect, or maybe, what's the right word? You guys trust us to move forward with good decisions. And there's another thing that's really important that's developing and blossoming, and that's the culture of the organization. It's really neat. I was often tagged as the culture guy at WestJet, and I'm watching this culture at Highstreet blossom. I think it's a better culture than we had at WestJet. You guys are a team, and you work really well together, and you get rid of those that don't fit on the team, which is critically important. But you also work really hard and produce an unbelievably good product. And that should give us as investors great comfort moving forward, as this team has, I mean, I've watched it change, we've all watched it change immensely, and Christina said 95 employees, and it's amazing. And the other neat thing is our contractors, trades that work with us are really on board. Most of them, or a lot of them, are investors in Highstreet. So what a great alignment, and really neat to watch. So I think the example Scott used about Calgary was great to show that, okay, not a great project. We could have just chugged along as rentals and lost a bunch of money on it, but Scott and the team said, no, we're not going to do that, and we turned it around over time to something that's not bad. We did have one investor, he's not here, Greg Kwong, and that was the only one that he invested in, and I spent a lot of time talking him into investing. And then he was the only guy that only invested in that project, and he goes, what, really? I'm the only guy? And it was the worst project we'd ever done. And after I'd spent weeks trying to talk him into it, but a good outcome, we still got lots of friends.
Yeah, I hope so. At least they're still here because we're making money anyway, so it's good. Anyway, yeah, so thanks, Don. While you were talking about team, I was reminded of when I drove up this morning. This is a good example of the Highstreet culture. I drove up this morning, there's a whole group of Highstreeters out in the parking lot stuffing drinks and stuff into coolers out front and getting ready for the bus tour. And I'm sure through volunteering and whatever these decided they're going to come out and do that. And I know that like this whole setup today, the event, the bus tour, everything, I got to thank Janelle and Alyssa. Alyssa's around here. Where's Alyssa? Put up your hand. Thank you very much. This whole thing and all the team. Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. And everybody supporting Alyssa and all the volunteers today to help make all this happen. It's awesome. I know we have some fun stuff planned for the bus. I don't even know what it is, But I know it'll be fun because I know Joanne and Nikki were working on it. So it's bound to be good. And we're excited about that. So that's good. What else are we going to talk about on this? I can go through some of the slide deck. We'll see if that spurs any questions. Try to hold your questions to the end, and then we'll get to that. It's almost 11, so we'll try to get through this.
Jan is recording this. Jan's the one that does the videos for Highstreet. Thank you, Jan.
Yeah, thank you. And an investor
I
as
think
well. Yeah.
hot Mike or Scott and I are hot mic'd. Sorry about the time in the bathroom.
That's right. Really bad. There's a quick highlight here. I mean, many of you, this is going to look familiar. I tend to repeat this information, but some highlights here on reminders. 30 completed projects. The only unprofitable project was the award-winning mixed-use building in Courtenay. It's a beautiful building, and it's the only one that didn't make any money. So we're not too focused on awards, let's put it that way. That said, a highlight of the tour this afternoon, I know a number of investors haven't even seen a completed building of ours, so we decided rather than go show you bare land in Kelowna, we'll drive you through a large community we built over in West Kelowna, featuring both our first construction project and our first net zero ready step code 4 building. And this is an awesome collection of High Street buildings, and Carrington View, the last one we did, I guess, was won an award for rental development of the year in Toronto at the Canadian Federation of Apartment Association or something. I don't know. We're not involved in it, but Skyline bought the building and put us up for an award as the developer, and it won across the country. So pretty cool. And that one did make money, so we'll accept the award. It's good. So yeah, we haven't lost investors' money. We're very focused on that. I would say the 2 rules of investing, that again, from Buffett. Rule number 1 is don't lose any money, and rule number 2 is don't forget rule number 1. So most of you should be able to repeat that by now, but I say that quite often. We've done well over the years. We don't fee the project. We've got, as Don mentioned, the employees, the trades, the board. We're all heavily invested. We're 30% of the investment in High Street, and we love the involvement from the employees and the trades and our suppliers. We've got a number of them here today, and I love it when they're investing in what we do and get to participate in that and see the wins that they're a part of, and it's fantastic. So more of that, the better. It's awesome, and we'll see that continue to grow over time. Another thing I think that you can be happy with is what we're doing and what we're providing. You know, we do provide great buildings, high quality. Some councillors don't think they're the best looking, apparently, but we create great buildings. They're high quality. There's no carbon. It's the highest level of building code in BC that everybody else isn't required to do in BC till 2030. We've been doing it since Carrington View. It involves a lot of technical detail. I don't know the full grasp of it, but there's a lot of building envelope and the equipment we choose, and to the common understanding, it's a better building envelope, it's more insulation, it's better windows, it's really paying attention to details where there's thermal breaks and trying to avoid thermal loss and air and everything else. We do air tightness testing, and we do all kinds of things. We spend money on soundproofing that others don't. We spend money on solar panels on the roof. We blanket the roof with solar panels. So we do a lot of things that I think are more advanced, yet still compete very well on cost. And that's a message too. If there's a need for housing in Western Canada, we can do it at a high quality at this level that we're building. And our quality is really a mid-range condo quality now. I mean, if you walked into it, you wouldn't distinguish it from any condo project for sale in the wood frame environment in Kelowna. Yet we're doing it at a high level of code and at a cost that's less than other condo builders in Kelowna. So I know we can compete well when there's need for housing. So that's always a good thing to remember when you think about your investment. little
One of
breakdown.
the things that struck me of when we first visited Carrington View is there's no gas in the building. And yeah, it's amazing. It's all heated through heat pumps and very efficient machines to heat the building, and then the high level of insulation and triple pane glass. It's pretty cool when you can build a building without any gas in it.
I won't talk about the investment details. I think most of you know you can sell every March. Think about long-term horizon. This isn't a trade. You're not going to sell in a year if you invested this year. Think long-term. We're much more confident in our ability to deliver over the long term than we are on the short term. So bear that in mind. Don't just do this for a year. No current plans for distributions, but you can sell in March. So the board comes up with a price, and every March you can sell. The price is based on a bunch of math, don't worry. On the values, I think it's important to point this out. Highstreet is very focused on living through and exemplifying these values, and we try to do this in our hiring. We try to do this in any people decisions we make. The easiest way to get fired at Highstreet is to not live the values. And if you just need help and technical expertise and training, but you have the right values, we will go to the ends of the earth to help you and coach you and bring you along. If you can't get the values, we'll move you out. And I think that's important and creates a great culture of teamwork. And it starts with, I'll touch on this briefly. I think humility, inquisitive and learning, and accountability, responsible and accountable, they all go together. And I always say, if you don't have some humility, you're not open to learning, and you won't take accountability. And which one it starts with? I think it starts with accountability. And so if we make mistakes and we have problems, which we all do, and we try not to, we'll always make mistakes, we just try not to make the same ones over again. But the first thing you have to do is, what was my role in that? Did I have a role in making that mistake? It could have been just a lack of communication. It could have been something you forgot to do. But if you're not open to that, if you're not taking accountability, you can't learn from it, because oftentimes people make a big problem happens and go, well, that was somebody else's fault. That was the engineer, that was the architect, that was the number of times I've heard that. And unless you're looking at what role you had, you don't learn from it. So that to me is very important, and it's the way we think. We always talk about guided by doing what is right as well. The simple way to put that, again, I steal a lot of ideas from Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. The best way to put being guided by what is doing, or guided by always doing what is right. So we phrased this so it fits in this high road acronym. But anyway, the way to think about that, and I talk to my kids about it too, is whatever decision you make, whatever you do, even if nobody's watching and nobody knows, would you be happy if it was reported by a well-informed reporter the next day in your local news? And so if you put everything through that lens, it's a great guide in behavior, because you think about, well, would I really want my family, my wife, my kids, my friends to see what I'm doing in the paper the next day, or to hear about a decision I made? And I say well-informed reporter, because sometimes you have to make difficult calls, and some people are going to be pissed off, but can you stand by that decision if somebody knew all sides of the story and could look at that and say, yes, I agree with that decision, it was the right thing to do? So it's a great way to think about it. Honest, open, and timely, we're doing that right now. And we try to teach our people that we'd rather hear, the earlier you tell us bad news, the better. It gets worse with time, and you've got to be open with that. The last one, just so it fit with the acronym, is determined and dedicated. I'd call it perseverance is part of that as well. And so there's definitely a perseverance aspect to push through obstacles and make sure we don't let things stand in the way. there's nothing I like better than somebody saying, no, we can't do something. And that definitely brings out the perseverance and the determination. So it's something we expect from our team as well, and all of all the people that work with us. So there's our values.
It's great to have this stuff written and documented, but cultures are defined by the actions of the leaders. A culture it's not what we say or write or profess, it's what we do. It's our actions. And those are lived out every day through what the leaders do. And that's probably one of the things I like the most about Highstreet, is that everybody is vehemently protecting the culture, the organization, and that makes it a really fun place to work. When you're knocking out of the park and doing well and making money and building great projects and providing homes for people, that is very rewarding. So it's the actions of the leaders that will define the culture of the organization. It's what we do, not what we say.
And to tag on to that, in terms of our vision, which I deleted the slide because we had too many, but I'll talk about the vision for a second. And the vision is really that everybody in Highstreet's community will want their friends to work with us, buy from us, and invest from us. And that order is important. And it starts with people wanting to work with us and recommend their friends to work with us. And as Don was talking about the values, I saw James over there, and it reminded me of a conversation we just had this week. It came up. He joined a budget meeting, but he was quite shaken by a conversation he had with somebody in our community in Comox, and it got to James, who's our regional manager. And somebody had been so upset about the scheduling of the elevator that they dressed down our community leader, and she was crying and upset, and he decided he had to take it out on somebody else. So then he calls James and beats him up for an hour. And so we heard this in our budget meeting, and just to clear the air, and I said, well, you can invite them not to be a community member anymore at Highstreet, and tell them they're no longer welcome. So Pino called them, and actually called the guy on the lease, who happened to be a guy who worked for one of our trades, who we'll talk to. He's so his friend is also or his partner is also in the building, and Pino called the guy on the lease and said, we won't put up with this, and we welcome you to move on to somewhere else, and we'll help you move and give you all your damage deposit money back and everything, and even incent you to leave, because we don't want you to be part of our community. So that's how that plays out in the real world.
I have another story. My son David, our son David, has worked for Highstreet for the past 6 months as a leasing agent in Comox, ironically. And I talked to him and said, David, does Highstreet really live the values on the front line? And he goes, oh yeah, big time. And he told me an example of, he was leasing to a lady who had 2 friends that lived in the unit, in the complex. And she wanted this particular unit. Maybe it had a view or something, I don't remember. And he said, well, you can put in an application, but I have to let you know there's 2 other people that have applications in, and you might not get it. And as it turned out, one of the other applications was successful, and he had to call her and tell her that she didn't get the apartment. And she yelled at him, like tore a strip off him, and then proceeded to go up the ladder to other people to tear a strip off them in the organization. And to Highstreet's credit, they supported David and the team out there. I think they all went all the way to you, didn't they, Pino? Supported them in that decision to say, you know what, maybe you should not be in this community at all, even if you did find another unit that fit. So you can see how this stuff trickles down. It makes a ton of sense. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to touch on this, so now switching gears to talk about the unit price calculation a little bit. I've been emphasizing this a lot in the annual letter, any chance I get. So please, if you haven't, please read the annual letter. I spend a lot of time on it. It's my version of the Warren Buffett annual update. So that's the kind of thought process I have into it. Anyway, there's three components of the price. So it's really important to think about just how does that break down? What does that mean? We have equity or cash in the land and permitting, and so anything that hasn't started construction, $1 you put in is worth $1. It doesn't change in value. We haven't increased the unit price as a result of that. So we have, if you think about that, it's conservative because we have land that we take through permitting. We may rezone, we may maybe a simple development permit, but we've held it for some time and we don't increase the unit value at all. So a couple easy examples right now. We've got land in Langford that we tied up at $40,000 a door. We've got 2 parcels in Langford that we bought. I think the combined total is about $16 million. And land in Langford is currently trading at about $80,000 a door. It's double. So you can do the math on that. It's pretty simple. We had $16 million in land. It's potentially worth $32 if we were to sell it today. Now it hasn't added a penny to the unit value. And not to say that we're going to sell it. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that we don't add any value until we start construction. We also have the big parcel up in Upper Mission in Kelowna that we're actually not going to drive by today. Rather than show you some dirt, we're going to show you a completed community in West Kelowna. But that site we tied up a couple years ago, and we were into it for I think $9.8 million. I think with permitting we maybe 10.5 to date, and we have 9.3. Yeah, we bought it for 9.3. Yeah, okay, thanks. And so maybe we're into it for 10.5. And we've got brokers who are saying, well, if you know, as a permitted project, I could sell it today for $30 million. Again, we don't add anything to the unit value on that. So it's important to understand how that plays into the unit value. Second, we have the projects that once they get under construction, we invest the 25% of cost to get them built. So now the cash is on an active project under construction. We have an expected profit margin. We know how long it's going to take. We project till the end and we say, okay, now we know, if I use a really simple example that is maybe indicative of some projects, but if you said, okay, we're going to make $20 million over 20 months, we literally just start adding $1 million a month. And that's it. So that's as complicated as it gets from a unit value appreciation perspective. And the board sits down and looks at all the math at the end of every year and determines that unit price for March. The other thing, the third part, is the portion we have in communities. And that's roughly, when I talk about percentages, right now land and cash, before the raise was about 20% of the total unit value, under construction was about 40%, and the communities that we operate is about 40%. And in that component, how we add value is we have cash flow. So the two first simple things is rental apartments produce cash flow. So cash goes in the bank, cash gets added to the unit price total. So every month we're making money on the apartments, we add to the cash flow, and we also every month pay down a mortgage. So we have mortgage debt, we pay down a portion of the principal on that mortgage. That adds to your equity in the unit price. So every time we pay a mortgage, we pay some portion of principal, which adds to your value that you have in it. So with all the communities we operate, I think in the next year, I think if we include Comox, it's around $8 million that we would add to the value of the units just based on the operating communities with no change in unit value. So that's if it doesn't go up or down. Now obviously the market can drive unit values up and down, and we can see the market drive it. So we can win on that and we can lose on that. But if we don't do anything with it, we still get the $8 million a year. So there's a great value in these operating communities that provides that ongoing stability. So moving on. And please, if you have any questions about that, ask at the end. I wanted to update this. In the investment brochure. I don't think I put this in the brochure. It was in the presentation that we did at the beginning of May, and I took the TSX as of May 2nd or something, and it was only down. We were down 1.7% year to date. So that was actually till May 15th. It was down 3.9. So the comparison got better. Suffice to say. So if you go to the bottom line there, that's the increase in value since we formed the 2016 LP. Get asked this question a lot. What do you guys have going on? The funnier question is developers in Kelowna, they go, you guys haven't really done anything since that project on KLO in 2018. You gonna do anything else? Yeah, we try to stay busy. So we're currently in Comox, Nanaimo, Langford, and the site we'll see this afternoon when we go on the bus. And the two, Nanaimo and Langford, are both 100% sold out condo projects. We haven't added, so we remember the previous slide about how the unit value gets calculated. So there's a bunch of profit left to allocate this year on those condos, on those 100% sold out condos. The market has risen since we sold them. We don't think we would lose any of those sales until the market declines by 20% or so. So if you think that the prices are going to go down more than 20% by this fall and winter, we could lose some sales and have to resell some of those condos at a lower rate. But we haven't allocated all the profit to the unit price yet. So there's still a runway left of profit allocation on those two projects. Comox has been going great. 88%, this was 87.5% yesterday, so I assume we're at 88 now. Pinot, I don't know if, probably 88, 89, yeah. So 88% rented, and we still have the last building that we're not taking occupancy on until I think it's mid-August, so moving people in mid-August there. Some quick pictures. Some of the Comox team. Nanaimo. Current status. This is not the best picture, but you can just see how tall the building is. And I wanted to include it because I happen to be out there, and this is my dad on the right-hand side. So Dad spoke earlier, so I had to get him in the presentation there. It's a couple weeks ago out in West Kelowna, so we'll see this crew today, and they're actually doing a concrete pour. They started before 6 o'clock this morning. I think the concrete was going at 6 o'clock this morning, so thank the team when we're out there today. So communities we operate. Comox is in there even though it's not completed, but we'll be up to 7 communities, over 1,100 that we currently manage. And that's your queue, Pinot. So this is an opportunity. So we talk about the communities we operate, representing 40% of the value of the unit price. Pinot has been another WestJet connection. I met Pinot back at WestJet when he was managing the call center, and we happened to be, this is a number of years ago, we were getting ready for one of these meetings. They were a lot smaller then, but Don and I, in typical fashion that we haven't changed today, we're working on our presentation that morning in the restaurant over in the coast here, over in the I think it's called the Vintage Room. We were at one of the booths. I look up and I see Pinot in line at the buffet, and hey, what are you doing here? And he was a regional manager at that point for WestJet, regional manager of airports, and I just kind of, Don and I were struggling with what do we do with these communities we operate. We really need to get somebody better in here and help us out, and I said to Pinot, hey, you ever thought about moving to Kelowna? And one thing led to another. So I'd like to say Pinot has been evolving continuously with Highstreet. He's got all the right values. He's an awesome guy, and communities is operating as well as it ever has. I mean, we have to. As in the role I'm in, I try to focus on the areas of the business where there's problems, and I've been able to step away from my involvement in communities in the last few months to focus on other things, and I'm confident that Pinot and his team have it put together. So I just want to bring Pinot up here so he can say a few words about his team. So thanks, Pinot.
So the key takeaway, if you want to know where I am, I'm usually in the buffet line. I love to hang out. Scott kind of summed it up. I was very, very fortunate to work at WestJet for 21 years, and out of that year, I got to work with Don the most. But Scott was always there. Always knew Scott. He was a heck of a guy. And now that I get an opportunity to work with him, I feel extremely fortunate to be here. So, thank you to both of you. Communities, you heard a lot about them today. Obviously, I love what I do. It's really the best job. I look out here and I go, what are all these people doing here? I just show up and the buildings are there. They're just like, here's the keys, you just run. It's great. For me though, it starts with a lot of really, really hard work. We build state-of-the-art buildings, but where the magic is when people move in. What we do in communities, what we're doing, what we're trying to do, how we're changing the way people look at the rental apartments, really all start with the people on a team. So I would really like to recognize those people that are here today. There's not a lot of them, because obviously they're obviously not in Kelowna yet. But for those of you that are here that are working in communities, can you please stand up? An enormous amount of, I have an enormous amount of pride to work with these people every single day. You heard a lot about Calgary. Calgary has been a challenging property for us, but it's performing extremely well, and that main reason is because of Larissa. So Larissa, if you can stand up. Larissa is our community leader there. She's doing an absolutely fantastic job. We just recently handed over, so prior to us handing it over to Simcoe from a property management perspective, Larissa was dealing with homeowners, she was dealing with renters, she was dealing with it all. So a huge thank you to you, Larissa, for all of the work that you did. There's also two people that I'd also like to recognize, and that's James and Kyle. Kyle, you guys stand up. You guys are part of our leadership team. Thank you guys very, very much. James was a community leader for us in Aberdeen View, which is our Kamloops property. I think he's here today, but moving to Kelowna, so he's going to be off the next week moving. Kyle was our community leader in Mission Flats here in Kelowna and has been in the office for several years. The only reason that I took the call from the person that Scott talked about was because Kyle just had a baby. Well, Kyle didn't have a baby, but he's a new dad, a couple days, so congratulations, Kyle. I always kind of talk about how, how this team performs, but really the proof is what people say about it. And I think that's the most important thing. So I've had a couple of weeks to work on this presentation. Thank you, Scott. So I pulled up a couple of Google reviews and I thought I'd share them with you. The first one here is, love the effort the building managers put into the events and just being really friendly. What kind of society do we live in now that it's like just being really friendly makes it on a Google review? I don't know. So, the communities have a friendly atmosphere and has far surpassed our expectation. We are first-time apartment people and we don't plan on leaving. So talks a little bit about really what we're building here. I looked around in Calgary for 2 weeks before I settled in McCall Landing. The distinguishing factor from our properties from this property was the spacious units, the amenities including the gym, the ensuite laundry, and the activity the property managers put on. Since we started living here, I have had nothing but a pleasant experience. Minor issues were taken care of by Larissa and Brian with the urgency, care, and personal responsibility. They have always responded to my requests with a quick turnaround time and a solutions approach. And then our last one, obviously Skaha Shores, which is our property in Penticton, opened mid last year. We just had our grand opening there on the 5th of May. Tons and tons and tons of rain, but we had a ton of opportunity to meet some really great people. Here's one of the reviews that we got from Skaha. Skaha Shores has been the best move for me. I have owned a home for the past 30 years until this last year. It was a hard decision to rent, but it has been amazing. The building is well managed and the employees are wonderful. It truly feels like home. Thank you, Skaha Shores, for giving me the freedom to experience a whole new life. So when I think about all of the stuff that we hear, what we're trying to build, it's truly working. It is a difficult job, right? As Scott mentioned, we're currently managing 1,100 homes, so we're upwards of 2,800, 3,000 people every day that are walking into you. You've just heard a couple of the challenges that we have, and I must say that it really doesn't happen all that often, because our community leaders do an absolutely fantastic job of managing the communities. But every once in a while, when you're dealing with people, it does create a bit of a challenging environment for them. They've always stepped up. I grew up under Don's leadership, where customer service comes from the heart, not from the manual, and that's really what we pride ourselves here on. We trust our people to make the right decisions, to really make that living experience for them great. And when we don't think they fit, I have no problems picking up the phone and saying, let me help you pack your bags. So thank you guys very much.
That's pretty good considering I texted you at 8:30 this morning to say something.
Jeez, you got more notice than I did. I did want to say something about this picture here is from Skaha Shores when we went for a rainy grand opening. And I started talking with a bunch of the tenants, community members, as we call them. And there was a bunch of guys my age that were looking forward to happy hour, and they go to happy hour every day at the same time. And there's a bunch of them in the community. And I said, well, what's the community like? And it is a community. It's the community of people that live there, and they like each other. And they're adamant that High Street doesn't let anybody in there that doesn't fit that mold, which is really cool. And anyway, I got a big kick out of it, talking to these old farts, and they're probably my age, but anyway.
Not much older. No.
And there is one thing we have a great community leader there in Carrie, and she protects the community vehemently. Anyway, there was a little teeny plastic fire extinguisher in the landscaping bedding, a really cute little fire extinguisher.
Fire hydrant.
Yeah, sorry, a fire hydrant. And if that was anywhere else, somebody would have either stole it or stepped on it or busted it, but it was sitting there, red and cute. And I thought, what other communities, rental communities, would you ever have something like that lasted very long? So it's those little things and then the community was spotless, and not a speck of dust out of place, literally, and which is a testament to the leadership in communities. And anyway, I thought that was a cool little data point on what I experienced by going there.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, it was a great event. And in true High Street fashion, it poured rain. Every one of our barbecues that we do for a grand opening, it pours rain. So we can count on that. We better get through so we can get to some questions here. We've got some future communities. We've got a lot of flexibility in this. I talked about that earlier in terms of either moving to smaller projects or not growing the team, but keeping it consistent. So we do have some flexibility. We've got a lot of land in the future that we can play with. So good future there. This is the Parksville one. We'll be launching sales in Parksville next week. And I've got a ton of interest being generated, so it's a bit of a test on the market to see whether or not there's still a lot of condo buyers out there. And if that doesn't work, we'll turn it into a rental.
If you haven't gone to the new Go High Street website, make sure you go visit it. It's really, the team's done a fabulous job in the new website.
Absolutely. Anna's here. She leads the marketing team. Anna, you want to put your hand up? There she is. It's Anna, yeah. Anna's had the pleasure of working with me a lot in the last few months, and that's sometimes difficult.
Anna, you can always call me for support.
Yeah, for sure. No, I had some pretty strong opinions about the brand and what we were doing, and the Buy High Street site. Anna really helped get that to creation and get it to where it is, and it's pretty cool. It really gets into the things that make High Street different, and we're able to communicate that a lot more effectively. So I strongly encourage you to check it out. Go High Street is the launch page to either look at the rental communities or the condos. But go to the condo side, that part is fleshed out and really gets into the quality that we put into the buildings. And it's worth checking out.
New logo as well.
Yeah, new brand, new logo, so that simpler, and Anna did that. And,
Cleaner.
I think it was tentatively doing that and seeing if we'd like it. And I thought it was great right from the start, so I probably just didn't say that. But yeah, it's awesome. Thank you. And this is the future community in Upper Mission in Kelowna. Yeah, so there we go. And this is a recap of what we were talking about, and then we'll get to questions. And before we do that, Derrick is here now. So Derrick, he's over at the door, raise his hand. So there's the board member that I mentioned earlier that hired me and probably shouldn't have in WestJet at the time as a public company with an internal auditor that was young.
Derrick is the audit committee at Highstreet.
Yeah, that's true. He's the audit committee, and we're happy to have him. So thank you, Derrick, and thanks for recognizing Derrick. So back to where we are. Don, you want to recap, and then let's get to questions.
I think we go straight to questions. It's 11:35, so we're running out of time here, and I know we're going to have lots of great questions. So,
okay, let's do it. I don't know if we have a microphone, and we can extend questions till maybe 12,
I'll warn you, if
15.
you don't start with your own questions, I'll pick on you.
There's sandwiches out as well. Oh, great, Justin, what do you got for us?
Push the red button on the bottom.
Just so everyone feels comfortable to start pillaring people with some questions. So,
Perfect.
now you were predictably cagey on your numbers on what you think the market will drop. As in, I'm going to say like the BC housing market. But you've obviously talked about this a lot internally at your board meetings. I just want you to try and put a figure on where you think, let's say, over 18 months, 2 years, how much it will decline.
Housing in general, or
Valuations of property.
of our properties?
No, the overall BC housing market. Let's use it BC. 'Cause
Overall BC housing
I
market.
think it'll be different over the country, so let's just keep it to BC.
I'll take that one.
Yeah,
Let's see if
have
you can
fun.
add anything
Have
to
fun.
it, Don. I'll turn it over to Charlie here in a second.
Somebody's going to write this down.
Yeah. So this is when I get to say, if I made a prediction, I'd be wrong. So I try to avoid being wrong. And I know that I've had guesses in the past. Do we expect turbulence? Absolutely. Do we know what it's going to be? No idea. If I put a number out, I'll be wrong. I think what we prepare for is just what are the scenarios? What if it drops 20%? Are we still going to be fine? What if it drops 30%? Are we still going to be fine? And that's the kind of thing we prepare for. But I wouldn't say. I mean, if you look at this, clearly we've been wrong on this in the past. When the pandemic hit, we, as a board, we quickly gathered together and thought, geez, with all this uncertainty, we're going to push projects out. We shouldn't even carry on with construction right now. We better, I don't know, how long can we pay people to stick around? What's going to happen? And we made a bunch of decisions at that time and put everything on hold and pushed it out. And then the market took off. And we were completely wrong. We were getting ready. We were thinking, hold on to cash. It's gonna be huge opportunities. There'll be bankruptcies everywhere. And then it turned into the best bull market we've ever seen. And so we were completely wrong on that. Look at how wrong we were in 2014 in Alberta. We were heavily invested in Alberta and plowing more in. Oh, oil can't go down. Oil's going to be, the minimum price for oil is $70, or everyone was talking about that in 2014. That won't go below 70. That's the marginal cost of production for the oil sands, and the oil sands is 4% of global production, so therefore it can't drop below that. And then it went to 20, and Alberta went to crap.
There's a data point I just pulled up here that something to ponder. The price of the average home in Canada, produced by the CREA, was $500,000 in March of 2020, just under $500,000. The price in January of 2022 was $820,000. average price of the average home in Canada. So how far could, I mean, it only has to go down, how many percent is that? 800 to 500. 30%? I don't know what is the number. 35%. If it goes down that much, it only goes back to what the prices were 2 years ago. What do you think it's going to go down?
Me?
Yeah, you.
I think immigration's going to I think immigration's going to help us. I think demand is going to be there. I think the opportunities to build are limited because land is actually pretty scarce. I think Vancouver will be different to interior, is my view.
You got lots of opinions.
Yeah, but I'm just
Come on up here.
But I'm interested in if like you guys have got a hard figure.
No hard figure.
Yeah, so
We've been burned too many times on that.
No hard figure.
I'll go talk to you.
Thanks.
What I do know is that interest rates have been, the cost of money has been close to free.
Yeah.
And that's had a big effect on house prices.
Thanks for kicking it off. I got Bill, Murray, Larry, and then Chris, and there might have been another hand I missed. So let's go in that order. So I hope you guys remember. Bill, go ahead.
I think market correction is what's necessary to keep this industry viable. Like, we see projects being canceled right now because we work for multiple customers, and they're getting shelved. I don't know, mainly because of budgeting. Do you see it's maybe what's necessary, and how do you predict when you kind of pump the brakes and maybe buy more land rather than keep building?
Yeah, it's a good question, Bill. So I think everybody heard that, but it was a kind of a two-part question on, do we think the industry needs the correction to adjust? They're seeing, so Bill does all of our drywall in all of our buildings and has for a long number of years, and he's a wonderful partner of ours and a big investor, so thank you, Bill. Awesome. His partner Travis is there as well, so thank you, Travis. I love the Raptors hat, by the way, it's great. Anyway, so good question, Bill. So the two parts, and the second part, what's the second part? I distracted myself, but certainly the correction, I mean, the market's gotten too far ahead of itself. So I think you asked, when would we halt on future projects? So on the first question, I mean, it can never go like this forever, and the constraints on supply and people and everything else, it's too much, which has led to the inflationary pressures that we're seeing, which is now it's going to be corrected. So it is coming and it will happen. The second part of the question, when would we not proceed? I talked about that. I think if we're facing a project that we can't produce with a decent margin, we won't proceed. And it's fair to say that we need to have all levers available to us, whether that's doing condos or doing rentals. We discussed at the board, because I mentioned at the beginning, we operate a business. We may have to accept in this environment a lower margin on projects going forward in the next couple of years to keep the business operating. That said, there's another lever that we have, and so I'm sure many of you know this. A lot of our projects in the last 5, maybe 4 years, we've split with investors. Don and I have 30%, the investors are 70%. We actually just recently made a decision to move that to 75-25, so 75 to investors and 25 for Don and I. And that's because in the last few financings we've done, Don and I haven't had to do a corporate guarantee or a personal guarantee. So that just started to happen a couple of years ago, to much of our relief. And certainly the cash that we have in Owners LP and the cash that we have as an organization helps reduce the risk for Don and I. And we've talked about, hey, in a really crappy environment, if we want to proceed with a project to ensure the returns are there, could we drop that further? Sure, absolutely. So, we're not opposed to that, to keep things going. If it got to the point where there's just no margin and there's no hope and the future looks bleak, well, yeah, we'd have to make the right decision. We can't go and build projects that we'd lose money on.
I put a little color on that. I was meeting with a developer in Calgary, and he was raising money for a project and asked me if I wanted to invest. And so I took the time to listen to him, and I said, what's your split? Because he had a GP-LP structure. And he said, it's 70-30. I said, oh, that's the same as ours. you mean 70 for the investors and 30 for you? And he said, no, the other way around. I keep 70 and he shares 30 with the investor group. And I said, oh, no wonder you're having trouble raising money.
And then he paid a guy $500,000 to raise $5 million. So
yeah, that was
I guess that's what you have to do when the deal's crappy. Anyway, I think it was Murray and then Larry and then Chris and now Peter. Did I miss somebody? Anyway, let's go. Murray.
Scott, a couple of slides back, you said that you had the market could go down 20% before you were concerned with Langford. And Don and the Bell family being good friends of mine, I get to pass questions by them quite a bit, which is great. So what the investors may want to know is that with Langford, I think the rents could have been a lot higher, but you didn't want to be greedy, partly because of the West or the High Street culture.
Sales. They're sold.
Yeah. So maybe it would be good for you to explain how that went, so that we do have a margin for a downturn.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was more of a conscious decision on Nanaimo than Langford, interestingly enough. I think Langford, it happened fast, and we didn't raise prices aggressively, but we weren't, we were doing well. We sold out in 103 days. The inevitable question people always ask is, well, you must have left money on the table. And well, if we're making over 20% margins, who cares? Like, what are we going to get upset about this? And if we provide great value for the buyers, then that's better for them. They're going to be happier. We build a better brand, everything else. So everything that comes with that is a better reputation, a better brand, better for the future, better when there's a downturn and prices correct. We've left money on the table. So when there is a bit of a correction, it doesn't even impact them. So they won't walk away. The Nanaimo was more explicit, where we'd launched sales and it was a crazy market. We had 70 sales in a week out of 172 to sell. And I just happened to catch wind about talking about raising the prices. I was just like walking by a meeting and somebody said something about raising prices or something. I was like, whoa, hold on. Our projected margin at the time, I can't remember, was like mid-20s. It's a little lower now because of the cost, the material cost increase and everything from COVID and supply disruption, but still over 20. And there was talk of raising the prices, and I was just like, hey, don't worry about it. Let it sell out. Keep the prices the same. Let's not get greedy. And there's just that idea around, whatever. There's a saying that I don't quite understand. Pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. I think pigs get slaughtered too, but anyway. Don't really get it, but everybody says it, so it sounds good. But yeah, don't be greedy is the general sense around it, and we do that in the operating communities as well. Don?
Yeah, we also sold them a long time before they'll be occupied, so there was a lot of raise. The values went up just because of time, but yeah, good question. And it's also interesting to point out, if you compare to public companies, had we announced those sales and we were a public company, the price of the shares would have shot up 20%, just because we had pre-sales. And as Scott mentioned, that the lift that we're going to get from those sales, pre-sales, isn't in the stock price. We haven't put in the value of the units.
Some is, as it's under construction, but yeah, there's more left to allocate there for sure. Larry, I think you were next.
Quick comment, and then I'll have a question. But thinking about the process and what happens in the future and all the changes. So I started with you guys in Chappelle, Willowbrook, and those were marginal deals. So we put extra money in Calgary.
Sorry, Larry.
But as you know, we've carried on, and I've never looked back. When I see the High Street, I actually think of integrity, and good credit to you guys on that. So I don't worry about, you talk a lot about how you're paying attention and trying to make the decisions for the future. So I don't, that commitment to that has been born way back then.
Thanks, Larry.
So big credit on that. My question is, how do you see the rental communities kind of playing into the whole, or the balance between your sales and rental communities potentially playing out as part of the dynamic in inflation and stuff like that, the business mix model could change. Can you comment on your thoughts about how that might play into it?
Absolutely, thanks, Larry. And the question was really how do we, what do we expect the mix to be, or how do we see the mix playing out between rental and for sale, or rental and condo? And it's market driven. I mean, that's really the answer. And so at times we'll do more rental, and at times we'll do more condo, and we'll react to the market on that. And obviously we've got this sales launch coming up in Parksville, and we're thinking it'll go well, and we hope it goes well. It's a bit of a test, since the news media now every day talks about a market slowdown, so we'll see if what the response is. It's seemingly solid. I don't know if Joanne, where are you, Joanne? Yeah. How many names do we have that say they're going to buy now? 30. So 30 names that look like solid buyers right now. So that's a good sign. It could build some good momentum in Parksville, and we'll see what happens. If it doesn't go well, the next one we do certainly won't be condo, and we'll go rental, and we'll do more rental. So we'll be flexible. Don, anything to add?
No, I think I heard the question a little different about the mix between rentals and condos, but that was a good answer.
Thanks, Don. Next, Chris?
Yeah, just a quick question on how you internally, coming through the last couple of years, like internally, how do you monitor immigration and this kind of population growth that we kind of hear is coming, especially in like our industry? We hear that because COVID, there was a slowdown in immigration and population booms, and what markets you might foresee that impacting how you kind of strategically get positioned.
Yeah, so the question was around, I think it was, how do we model that into where we might position ourselves, like with the immigration coming and where we think we might be. To be honest, it's not really a factor in our decision making. It isn't, I don't want to say at all, probably at all. I don't think about it, because it doesn't, to us, what matters when we're looking at land is what's the current rent, what could we get for rent in that market, and what can we sell for. We don't predict the future. We don't try to say, what are we going to get in 2 years when all this immigration hits? What are we going to get in 2 years in rent? We don't predict. If the math doesn't work the day we're looking at the land, we don't buy the land. So I don't bother trying to make the prediction. If it works out better, wonderful, and sometimes it works out worse. But I can tell you, I spent a ton of time in the beginning analyzing I'd look at income and immigration and population growth and all this stuff, and then be completely wrong. And so I realized it didn't really, I was doing all this work and it didn't really matter. Like I did it in Courtenay, and then I did it in Calgary. Before we went into Calgary, it went to shit. I mean, all that stuff that was happening up till 2014, it looked wonderful, and then it wasn't. And so the immigration statistics, everything else didn't matter. It was oil going to $20 a barrel, and things went to, well, I already said that. Anyway, I think
Calgary was probably one of the most immigration-intensive communities.
Yeah, other than Vancouver, Calgary was big. Anyway, we'll go Peter and then Jim. I think I don't know if I missed anybody over here. If I did, please put your hand up again. But we'll go Peter and then Jim.
Peter's our token lawyer.
Yeah, we should recognize Peter's with Ferris and has been with us since the beginning. Incorporated what was originally Mission Ventures, which became the holding company, and that was in April of 2005. It was the first and only time I played hockey in Kelowna. I met Peter, and that was the end of my hockey career. But I met Peter. He's been a wonderful asset and addition and investor and partner with Highstreet. So thank you, Peter. Go ahead.
Thanks, Peter.
Larry had more or less my question, but I have a backup question too, which is quick for both of you. What's one thing, if any, or what is the one thing, if any, that you worry about looking forward? You can't say rising legal fees.
That's the first thing that came to mind.
Don, you want to try that one?
The thing that we worry about most. Yeah, the neat thing is today I don't really worry about anything, which is good and bad because I should be worried about something. And I suppose it's what we talked about, changing environment and making sure that expectations are set in this group so people know that, like Scott said, things could take a dip, and they probably will. Because when you get that kind of rise in prices, and yeah, it's going to change, and history has told us that it will. So that'd probably be, for me, that'd probably be what I worry about the most. But generally speaking, I think the company is firing on all cylinders. This team put together a board meeting, an AGM, and did a raise, and had a big change in construction management in the last 2 weeks. So it's a wonderful team that's firing on all cylinders and just getting better. So yeah. What do you worry about, Scott?
Rather than, I wouldn't say worry.
Scott's not a worrier to begin with.
We just always think about things. I don't find any value in worrying. And I mean, I'm looking around. There's at least 3 guys here from our Entrepreneurs Organization Forum, and the question's always, what keeps you up at night? And I go, I sleep fine. I never have issues sleeping. They know that. I'd say it every time. It's sleep fine. What are you worried about? Whatever. It's a hard question for me to answer, and maybe that's the psychology that's allowed us to keep forging ahead no matter what's going on. I don't get hung up in worry, and I didn't get some gray hair now, so I don't know if that's worry related or just age, but I'd say age. Anyway, thanks. Jim, you were next.
Yeah, I was curious, in the last 8 years, you've really set a standard becoming more vertically integrated. What is your next goal in vertical integration?
So the question was, in the last few years, it seems like we've become more vertically integrated, and what's our next step in that? Well, on the tour today, we'll see a lumber yard in West Kelowna. That's a joke, but it looks like a lumber yard right now. There's a lot of material out there, and we've talked about buying a lumber yard, a hardware store. We were close to a deal on one, actually. We almost did. And that's one area of vertical integration that we're interested in, and we'd continue to look at. It's on the back burner for now. It's not the highest priority at this time, and given the uncertainty going forward too, it's not the right time. Maybe if some of them are in difficult situations in the next couple of years, it'd be a good opportunity. But and we'll keep an eye on it. But be very opportunistic about that. It's not some companies. Again, I can relate this to following Berkshire and Buffett. We don't create a strategic priority and say, we're going to do this no matter what, because you make some strategic decision that makes you overpay for some opportunity. Instead of that, we're going, we like the idea, and we're gonna wait until the right opportunity comes to us, and we're not gonna go chasing it and overpay for something just because we think it's a good idea. So that's that's my general approach to it. I'm not chasing it, but I'm open to it. So that's the one idea. Beyond that, we're certainly going to reach a point where if we don't grow the construction and development side, we're going to be swimming in cash, and what are we going to do with it? And that becomes a board discussion, board decision about what are we good at, and can we keep doing this in other areas, and what else could we do? But certainly not in the near future. Don? Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Scott's also brought up modular a lot in the board meeting, so something we may look at in the future.
The second part of that question was, finding people is always difficult, and I know you've got a great culture, but how do you see yourself sourcing and keeping the right people?
Culture.
Yeah, the question, I'll say a lot Well, I'll talk a lot more and say a lot less than Don on that, so that'll be my take. But yeah, the question was, nobody got that joke. I'll talk a lot more and say a lot less. So anyway, the question was, how do we, what's our strategy?
I'll talk a lot more and say a lot less, but say the same thing.
Yeah, but say the same thing, yeah. What's the strategy to attract and retain and talent and people? I mean, we recognize that was an issue for us, which is one of the reasons Janelle joined us, and so we now have a VP Talent Services, and we're focused on that. I think, to Don's point, yeah, it is really about creating the environment that our high streeters and the trades we work with will want to recommend people to work with us. And if we can do that, we'll be successful. And you know, as difficult as the environment has been, we do manage to find people still. And so I just kind of look at that. We have pockets of areas where it's difficult. I know if anybody, I think we're making an offer for a senior architectural tech, I think. Is anybody, Neil, do you know? Maybe? Working on it. If anybody knows an architectural tech, I know that's one of the challenges. So if we could find somebody, that'd be great. But generally, you know, we post positions and we get lots of applicants, and I think that's a testament to everybody here and everybody doing what they're doing.
I always subscribe to the theory that people work for people, not companies.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Just assuming supply chain issues continue on into late 22 and 23, and the strong cash position you guys have, is there any merit for Highstreet to purchase product directly for its projects, considering you have a repeatable product, lining it somewhere, or is there too much risk in catching those numbers on those prices, storing it in a yard, and then shipping it to site units?
Yeah, the question was around, is there value, or have we considered buying products kind of, I would say, assume in bulk and storing them somewhere, and because we are doing repeat buildings. I think my answer, you know, we've talked about bulk buying before. We've talked about getting container loads of materials over from overseas, whether that be plumbing or electrical or what have you. We've done it we did it with flooring in the past. I'm not sure Doug and Marcel are here. I don't know if we're still buying container loads from overseas, but guys nodding, we are. We do that through our sub-trades. We don't get involved in it directly. And I think that's just, it's hard enough. It's hard to do what we're doing now. And we're not looking to add complication and logistics and everything. I mean, I think we need to get better at what we're doing now before we even think about taking on something like that. And so we try to recognize our own limitations and just realize that, hey, even if we thought it was a good idea, let's just pump the brakes and focus on getting better at what we're doing. Don?
Yeah, what's the price of lumber going to be next year? What's the price of fuel going to be next year? Yeah, it's a form of gambling.
Michael?
Just to elaborate on the gentleman's question, a couple of questions go about the hiring people. I had to leave Highstreet. I love working there, and I'm glad to be back in a capacity. But I think when Highstreet hires you and you get inside the team, the environment, that if you're the right fit, you won't leave or won't want to leave. So I think that's really what it is the right people stay.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Thanks for that comment, and appreciate it. And that's a good point. I think retention isn't our issue. We don't have an issue with retention, and that's due to the culture and due to the leadership and the whole team and everybody they're working with. So that's great. Thanks for pointing that out, Mike.
I was going to say, and get a haircut.
Get a real job answer. Good luck. Look at that flowing locks he's got there. You're just jealous, Don. That's
He does have a worry.
That's right, yeah.
That
That's
is a
right.
worry.
Yeah, he didn't even want to fly out here anymore because of the price of jet fuel or something. Anyway, any other questions?
Great questions.
Yeah, no, we'd love to. I could sit here all day. It is just afternoon, but I'd love to take on one more if anybody's got
I bet you people need a pee break.
burning desire to ask a question. Anyone? Okay, Paul. Yeah, you had your hand up. We'll go Paul and then Bob.
Just to make a comment relative to the leadership and the whole leadership team here, I think you guys are in a great position to pivot for whatever's coming down the road to us, economy-wise, interest rate-wise, whatever the case might be. So you started this today with people, and I think you got a great team to pivot to whatever's required. So happy to be part of it.
Thanks, Paul.
Right on. Thanks, Paul.
Paul did a lot of real estate work for us at WestJet, and now he's doing his own projects and a high street investor. Very successful projects, I hear. In fact, I heard you sold a project without even building it. Yeah. Attaboy.
Yeah, Paul's another long-term connection, and thank you, Paul, for those nice comments. I've known Paul since 2001, probably-ish, when I got introduced to you through Mark. So Mark Hill was my boss at the time and in charge of real estate. Paul was helping WestJet with all their real estate, and he'll tell the story to everybody. But I had to fire him. Ultimately, he likes to tell everybody that the first time he meets them. But then we maintained, like, it was friendly enough, and we maintained a good relationship. We ended up sitting on a flight together out to Kelowna from Calgary one time, and he's just across the aisle. We caught up, and it was an awesome kind of rekindling of the relationship. A few years later, it was probably 2011 or around 2011, I think. And he ended up investing in our deals, and then a few years later, he said, "I'm thinking about doing some developments." Great, yeah, do it. And so now he's kicking ass and doing a bunch of developments, and also was kind enough to act as a mentor for our team. And when Christina was just getting into land acquisition, Paul offered to help us out on that, and he's got a long background of doing that for other companies, and helped us out and has really helped train our team up. And so thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
It's good when you can fire somebody and they're still your buddy. We didn't really fire you. We just replaced you with somebody internally, and you had the option to come internal, and you turned that down. Okay.
I think it was from Sandy, actually. We want to throw somebody in the bus. It was Sandy Campbell. Throw him under the bus. I don't know where Sandy is anyway. He's in PEI and eating potatoes or something. Derrick's laughing in the back because he reported to Sandy for quite some time. So this is good.
More burning questions?
Bob, you had your hand up.
Yeah, Scott, I was just curious, with the rising interest rate environment and the uncertain economic times we face, how do you think about, project financing in your business? Does that change?
Have loads of cash.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ultimately that gets dictated by the bank, but if there's still a margin there, then we expect it to be typical 75% loan to cost, as long as there's a margin in it. And with our excess cash, we can always buy down the debt. And so, that'll be our approach going forward, is have lots of cash in order to deal with it. Because the biggest risk on rental apartment development, when you develop it, is on takeout. If the value's gone down and you don't have it, and so what you do is you get a construction loan, and that gets the project built. And if the value when it's finished, like what happened to us in Calgary, is lower than the value that you started with, you can't get what they call takeout financing to take out the construction loan and replace it with a long-term loan to cover the construction loan. So you have to come up with more cash at that point. And if you don't have the cash, the bank will take the project. So that's how people go bankrupt when they're doing rental apartment development. So we have to make sure we've got lots of cash in case that happens. And so that's why we're well positioned in the event that happens. Okay, we better wrap it up. The buses are going to depart at 12:45. Just a quick item here. So you've got a color on your name tag. So just look for the color when you board the bus, and you get on the same color that's outside the bus that you have on your name tag. Let's all grab some lunch, mingle.
Who's on the red bus?
Hopefully you're here the rest of the day. Thanks,
Hey,
everybody.
red bus.
Yeah.
Go red bus. We're gonna
Thanks,
kick
everyone.
butt. Hey, awesome job, buddy.